Well, stop me along the way if you have questions. I'll try and pause here and there to see if I can answer any questions, but don't hesitate to interrupt me. Oops. There we go. Okay. Just real quick, some of the reasons why container gardening is popular and why you might want to consider it versus a traditional backyard garden. One, which is probably one of the best things about container gardening, is it can work in small or even larger spaces. And what I've tried to do throughout the presentation is show you lots of pictures. I've captured lots from the internet. These aren't all my photos. They're ones I've captured across the internet, but I just think they do a good job of illustrating the different size of container gardens that you can have and how you can really get a lot of vegetables even into a small space and a lot of production. And if you have a large space, there's some really creative ways to use that space to also get quite a bit of production out of those vegetables. So you can just see, like, up at the top picture on the right, there's a really large deck there. And they've used some kind of raised beds, these rectangular raised beds, and they've got, you know, quite a bit of vegetables. And it looks like they might even be using the back walls of trellis, which is really creative and trying to make do with smaller spaces, is trying to grow things up like cucumbers and taking advantage of those, taking advantage of a fence or a wall. That'll really enable you to do more in containers. But also small, we'll show some really small ones. You know, bottom left is kind of a small little space, but they've got a couple of cherry tomatoes there. It looks like strawberries, maybe even a big basket of chives, which is a great herb to do for container gardening. So lots of options. Container gardening is really visually appealing. I think it can make your deck or your space look really beautiful and natural, adding in that the greenery and then all the colors of the vegetables that you can have can really make a space more interesting and a place people want to go and check out. Container gardening can be less time consuming than a traditional garden. You know, you're not necessarily, you know, doing that kind of back breaking on your hands and knees, hoeing up the backyard. So it can be a little less time consuming and less hard work. And once you get your containers ready to go, there's definitely an effort of getting your containers set up. The other benefit is just that it's mobile. You can move things around, take them with you, but also, you know, as the sun changes its position in the sky over between spring, summer, and fall, a lot of your containers, depending on, you know, how heavy they are, or if you put them on wheels, you can move them to places that are getting more sun. And so kind of take advantage of that and enable your plants to get more sun. But we'll talk about kind of placement here in a second, but those are just some of the benefits for container gardening. Choosing your location. This is important when you're thinking about doing your backyard or on your porch or your patio. The first most important thing I think in container gardening is doing it somewhere nearby, somewhere that's close to you for access that you can get to and enjoy, not only for harvesting, but for maintenance mainly. You also want a place that gets at least 6 hours of full sun per day. That's really important in vegetable gardening. Even though some veggies can take shade, they still really need at a minimum 6 hours of full sun per day, preferably 8 or more. You know, your tomatoes and peppers really can't, they're not going to do as well in shade, but they need that full 8 hours of sun per day. But some of your spring plants, your radishes, your lettuce, carrots, they can handle a little more shade. And when we talk about some veggies later, those are good for shade. But when I say shade, I'm really talking about they still need 6+ hours of full sun per day. So it's just less sun, not really shade. You'll also want access to water. I think you see the two pictures on the right-hand side, there's hoses there. Access to water is huge. In Chicago, I lived, I think I talked about this back in the fall, but I lived in a townhouse that had 3 levels. And on the 3rd level, we had a deck, and that's where we had all our plants and all our veggies. And I didn't have water on the 3rd level. I had to haul it up from the 2nd level. And you can imagine, as I'm trying to scurry out of my house in the middle of summer to get to work in July and August, the last thing I wanted to be thinking about was hauling a big jug of water from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor to try and water my plants. So ease of water and having it close by is important when you think about where you're going to put your pots. And then out of the wind if you can. And then lastly, if you have any walnut trees in your yard, walnut trees have a chemical in them that can be toxic to some plants, and some plants just can't grow in that chemical. If you're really interested and want to talk about it, we can talk about it at the end. I can suggest some plants that will work. So there's a number of vegetables that don't care if there's a walnut tree nearby, but there's some plants that just, like your tomatoes and peppers, just they aren't able to grow because there's a chemical in a walnut tree, and that chemical is in its leaves, its branches, its roots, the walnuts themselves. So really, if you have a walnut tree, you need to you might have to rethink your container garden and what you can grow. But so that's just a little bit on choosing a location. And then when you think about container gardening, you might want to think about your style or kind of what you want your look to be. So, traditionally we have pots on a deck, which are kind of like the pictures on the left-hand side. You can, depending on the type of pot you choose, it can be more rustic or more modern. And you can kind of see how they've got a different style or look to those pictures on the left. But the pictures on the right-hand side, especially the three on the bottom, those are kind of more backyard garden style. So if you have the space, you can use wood raised beds or even plastic raised beds or even really, really big pots to grow vegetables. So these are all some backyard, the picture in the middle with the two square or kind of squarish beds with the fence in the back, that's actually from a garden I had in Chicago. And you can see it got a lot of shade. So that wasn't a great spot for us, but we did a lot of lettuce and spinach there that worked pretty well. But you can see how you're taking advantage. That's just a strip of, it's actually a walkway between the parking lot and the back gate and the house. So they're definitely a way to take advantage and a way to, depending on the pots you choose, you'll have a completely different style garden look. So think about that when you're selecting your pots and kind of selecting your placement. And then I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about types of containers, because the material you use and the size of container all make a big difference in what kind of plants you're going to choose for those containers. So at a minimum, you generally want to have a pot that's at least 12 inches in diameter. Bigger is going to be better for certain plants. So anywhere from 12 to 24 inches in diameter, around a 1 to 3 gallon container. And that's really good for some single plantings of, like, a single broccoli plant will fit in a 12-inch diameter plant. A single tomato would fit in a 12-inch diameter pot. But you'd want, tomatoes are a little different. I'll talk about those when we get to them. Tomatoes have a really deep taproot, and so you want tall pots. So kind of that purple pot that you see there, it's purple. Tomato. So just, better to think through what you're planting and what pots you have that can work. If you have some smaller pots, something less than 12 inches in diameter, maybe 6 to 12 inches, that's better for herbs or greens. They'll do better there than some of your bigger plants like cucumbers or peppers. Those are better off for your herbs. You want to choose the same, hang on, let me shut my door, sorry. You want to choose the same style planter. The reason I say this is I have a mixed bag of planters, things that I've collected over time, all sorts of different pots of different material and different sizes and different weights. And one of the things I struggle with most is watering them all evenly and consistently. Because they're different shapes and different sizes, they hold water or release water differently. And so some of them dry out much faster than other ones. So it's very difficult for me to get on a consistent schedule of watering my pots. So it's something to think about. If you're starting kind of from scratch, or you're going to be buying some new pots, you can buy them in different sizes and shapes, but you want kind of the same material, and think through that. So like if you're going to do steel, you want like all galvanized, all steel planters. That'll just help you from your watering perspective, kind of make it a little bit easier. But you can see there's all types of planters to choose from. We talked a little bit about why depth is important. Weight is also really important. If you think about how heavy the planter is, and then you add potting mix to that, and then you add your plants and water, they can be really heavy to move around. Anything more than a 12 diameter, 1 to 3 gallon pot is going to be super heavy and hard to move around. So think about that when you place it. There are these cool little things that you can buy. They're round and they have wheel or square and they have wheels on them. You can put your pot on that and then kind of move it around on the wheels. So just something to think about. And then drainage. You want to make sure all of your pots have holes in the bottom so that water can drain out. They have to have holes to drain water out. That's really, really important. You don't want them sitting in water, especially with the spring rains around here. They'll just sit in water, and that's not good for the plant roots. Little more on containers. I wanted to talk about materials, and I wanted to give you some ideas of cost. The material can really drive cost, and I think is interesting. Most of these prices and these pots that I picked are from Home Depot. I just did a search on their website. Plastic is going to be one of your most affordable options. It's also very lightweight, and there's all sorts of shapes and colors and sizes, but they're not very durable. They're not going to last as long. I tend to find that mine break wherever I try to pick them up. If I pick them up on the edge, they'll crack or break. You don't necessarily want to leave them outside over the winter because that's just going to reduce their durability. But they are certainly more affordable, and they are certainly unique colors. I think there's really fun colors, and you can get really big ones that don't weigh a lot, which is really the reason I go for them. There's also some material called resin. You can buy a resin planter. That's actually a plastic. There's a difference between kind of a plastic resin and a true resin. So if you're really interested in that, I think the pot on the right, that one that's $17 is a plastic resin. It has a little more durability, and a true resin has even more durability, but that would cost more. So I just do a little bit of looking at your pots. I go for, lightweight, easy to carry, easy to move around. And I like the different colors. I think these pots, the plastic pots, can have really pretty pops of colors here and there. Your other option is clay, which I do a lot of clay pots as well. They're going to be a little heavier, obviously, but they're also inexpensive relatively, and they're durable. They're much more durable. They're going to last a little longer. They're probably not going to do as well with our winters, especially like the cold we had in February, where it dipped, below 10 degrees. That was just crazy. That's really hard on your clay pots. So I usually bring my clay pots in. I don't have a lot of large clay pots. They're much smaller, more for my herbs and smaller planters. I do have some of these glazed ceramic pots. So that's the one right next to it, the one that says $425. That's outrageously expensive. But you can buy some really beautiful glazed ceramic pots, but they're going to be crazy expensive and have about the same durability as a clay pot. I used the glazed ceramic pots for things that I bring indoors and outdoors. So I use those a lot for any sort of cactus, anything that I'm going to take, succulents that I might take outside during the summer and bring inside during the winter, or herbs like rosemary, thyme. If I want to kind of take it outside and bring it back in during the winter, then I'll use a prettier pot, something that matches with my home decor maybe. So just some options to think about there. And the other types of material, fiberglass and wood, you can see the two on the bottom. One's fiberglass and it's $350, and the other barrel is $85, much more affordable. That's a wood material. Fiberglass is lightweight, super durable, but obviously very expensive comparably. And wood, if you get wood, I think you can find this in all price points depending on what you're buying and what you're looking for. But if you are buying wood material or making your own, don't use treated lumber. Be sure to use cedar or redwood. Those are really the best materials. Treated lumber has chemicals in it and can potentially leak into your plants, and you just don't want that to happen. That's traditional materials. Some other materials that you can think of, that you can think about using, metal buckets. We saw that first picture that had some really cute, when I was first talking about the benefits of container garden, some of those metal containers. I just thought, different sizes, heights and widths that looked really neat packaged together. You can also buy these feeding troughs or horse like watering troughs. They're neat, I think, as planters. They work really great. You may have to punch some holes in the bottom of them, but they're really large, and they just bring a very modern, kind of unique, rustic look to your style, to maybe your deck or your backyard area. There's some other things like this one planter on the left is a fun one that I saw at Home Depot. All of those little rectangular boxes move, and so you can reshape that planter as much as you want. It's the one on the far left that's a square shape and got several different plants coming out of it, but it's a fun one, I think. You can also do more, I'll call these more like backyard garden styles. You can use plastic buckets. You can use fabric grow bags. Fabric grow bags are really handy, super lightweight. They work very well. They're very porous, so they let water out in a good way so that the bags can breathe and drain water. A couple other pictures are from a neighbor's garden. They use some old, laundry baskets that they lined with straw and then filled with dirt, and put them up on some wood, what are those called?
Pallets.
Anyway, yes, wood pallets. Thank you. And then down near the bottom, there's an actual straw bale. So I don't know if you've heard about straw bale gardening, but people put plants and grow them right in bales of straw. If you want to learn more about that, there's tons on the internet. It does take quite a bit of time to prep those straw bales. But these materials are really great for container gardening if you don't have a lot of space. But you can see, if you don't want to be hoeing and digging in the ground and you want to control the soil a lot more, these are great for that, but they do have more of a kind of a rustic backyard look. So before I go on, are there any questions about materials or containers to use or anything on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the picture you have up right now, the watering troughs.
Yeah.
We have one of those. It's probably a little taller than this one, but it's oblong. To fill that with potting soil, is that something? Do you or can you use filler at the bottom or maybe a different material so you don't have to buy bags?
In a second, I'll talk about the different types of potting soils and mixes to use. But what I would do for that is definitely put a filler on the bottom. You could just put rocks in there. That would be a good filler. It'll make it super heavy, so you'll never be moving it anywhere. But it's going to be pretty heavy as it is. But yeah, you can put some materials in the bottom. And then I would actually, if you have a container that big, I would fill it with, you can buy bags of 50-50 topsoil and compost. And that's what I would use to fill that. If you're going to have smaller containers, in a minute, I'll recommend a different type of, I'll recommend potting mix over potting soil. But when you have something that big, you can kind of control it by adding compost and other materials.
And can you reuse the soil the following year, or do you just need to bend it?
In something that big, yes, you can reuse the soil. What I would encourage you to do is to add compost every year. So add compost, and if you're really going to get serious about using it a lot, you'll want to read up and learn about fertilizer and how to add fertilizer. And I could certainly talk to you about that at some point. But that's basically a raised bed. And you just want to keep adding nutrients to the soil and improving the texture of the soil every year because the plants are just using it up. Using up the nutrients. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had any experience with the product that's made from cement and peat? It's called Hyper. Yeah. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
I've heard of that. I have never used it. I have never seen it used. I don't have any experience with it. I'm sorry, I don't. But I have seen it. I do know some folks that have used that, and I don't exactly know how. Maybe anybody on the call has used it. I don't. I've never used it. It's neat, right? You can form it into kind of whatever shape you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of it's a fun DIY kit, I think.
A messy, I think. That's why I'm hesitating to do it.
That may be, yes. Isn't there somewhere in Overland Park where you, a garden person, I have to ask my Jean about this. There's somebody in Overland Park where you can actually go to his garden studio and you can create and build your hyper tufa pot right there.
Well, that'd be good.
And so you don't have the mess. You know, you pay a little extra to have someone else help you do it, but you know, I'll have to look and see if I can find out who that is. But
Jennifer, when you buy a pot and there's like that one hole in the bottom, is that enough?
Yeah, that'll be enough. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. And then you'll just have to kind of evaluate how well the pot drains. The next thing that helps your pot drain will be potting mix, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, one hole's enough. I mean, if you're the one putting the holes in, like a plastic bucket, and you're going to put a bunch of holes in, I would put 3 or 4, but you're fine with 1. I actually like my pots to have a saucer on the bottom, like a pot with a hole in the saucer, because then I can, you know, if the water runs out, it'll catch it and it can sit there for a while. And if I see it's sitting there for too long, then I can lift the pot and dump the saucer out. You know, so that's how I like to have pots with the saucer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the place that you're talking about is called From the Summer's Garden. Where you can go build your own concrete planter, and it's like on Barclay Street in Overland Park. But it's called From the Summer's Garden.
Summer's Garden?
From the Summer's Garden.
Oh, from, okay.
I thought he did a hyper tufa class one time when I was looking at some of the offerings, so you might check that out.
That'd be fun.
I've gone there for a stepping stone class.
Yes.
It was really nice.
Nice.
They might have been cement, the stepping stones.
I see an outing in our future.
So he does a lot with concrete, but you just need to drive by his house because his whole yard is full of stuff. So you can check that out. It's on Barclay.
Okay. Very good.
Well, anyways, there's just tons of container options, as you can see, at all price points and, you know, at all different types of styles and looks. And it's all kind of what you're going for. I live out on 10 acres, so I tend to go with what's most affordable and most functional and meets my needs, but that doesn't always work from a look standpoint. It's not always the prettiest. So. Okay, let's just talk real quick about soil and fertilizer, and then I'll get into actual what you should plant in your containers, what vegetables work well. If you have containers, and these are kind of the maybe the 12 to 16, 18-inch containers, not necessarily a trough or a raised bed. A raised bed or a trough, I would definitely use a mix of potting soil, of topsoil and compost. But if I am doing containers, I use potting mix. And I would say that is one of the big game changers for me over the last few years. I've had a lot more success with my plants using potting mix, not potting soil. So there's all different kinds. You know, there's 3 listed here. There's Miracle Grow. Black Gold is one of my favorites. I like it a lot. I think you have to go to a hardware store to get it. That's where I get it. I can't find it at Home Depot. But you can use an all-purpose potting mix. You can use a container mix. You just want it to not be a soil. And the reason that is that potting mixes are more lightweight. They hold water and oxygen better. They allow a little bit of flow better. They don't clump like soil tends to clump and get thick, like kind of like clay. So they have better moisture control. You can buy potting mixes that can be kind of 2 unique things about them. One, they can have something called moisture control, which are these little granules that help hold water. You don't necessarily need that. If you have it, it's great for, you know, containers that are going to be outside a lot. If you're starting things from seed, I don't like to use moisture control. You know, if you're starting seedlings and then transferring those to bigger pots, I don't like to use moisture control. But if you're just planting an entire transplant, or, you know, you've got a big pot, you can use any sort of potting mix with or without moisture control. And then the other thing that they'll have sometimes is a slow release fertilizer. Sometimes they'll have fertilizer in them. I think it's great if it has fertilizer in them to get it, because if it doesn't, you should add some fertilizer to that potting mix. There's the second set of pictures of some different options for fertilizer. I've seen a lot of recommendations about containers of what type of fertilizer to get, whether you should get a high nitrogen, or sometimes they call it a balanced fertilizer. Really, anything you get is going to be great to put in there. I tend to go with high nitrogen just because that's the #1 nutrient that plants are typically eating and using. And so that's what you tend to lose the most. The best way to know is to get a soil test, but if you're just getting started here and you bought a bunch of soil, you've got pots, you're getting ready to fill them, and they don't have any fertilizer in them, you can buy some bags of lawn fertilizer works. Typically what's on the fertilizer is a number. There's 3 numbers. You can see right there in the middle of that Osmocote says 18612. That indicates the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that is in that. So if you want high nitrogen, it's usually like 2900 or 3003. And that's typically lawn fertilizer. That's what I buy. I buy a big old bag of lawn fertilizer that does not have weed preventer in it. You have to make sure it does not have weed preventer. But a big old—
What's that? Doesn't have what in it?
Weed preventer.
Oh, weed preventer.
Weed preventer. Yep. But if you just have some pots and you want to buy a smaller bag of fertilizer, you can buy things that are considered all-purpose or balanced fertilizers. And those 3 numbers will be 10-10-10 or 12-12-12. So, and you can see this one's 18612. I buy, for some of my containers, I buy those little plastic jars of Osmocote Plus, that little pink jar that's in the middle. That's a 15912. I have some fig trees and some other fruits in pots, and that's what I use for them. So, and I put that on every year, maybe several times a year, depending on the fruit.
So if you use the Miracle Grow potting mix, do you need the Osmocote or not need the Osmocote?
If it has, read the bag. If it says it has a slow release fertilizer in it, okay, you won't need it initially.
Okay.
But the next year you're going to want to put that fertilizer back in. Okay. Or if you do like spring and then fall, then in the, take out your spring plants and you put in your fall ones, you're going to want to put fertilizer in there. Okay. But the one thing you are going to need, regardless of whether it has fertilizer in the potting mix or not, is a all-purpose water-soluble fertilizer. And the best one I can recommend, and the one I use, is Miracle Grow. It's this little blue crystals, and you just put it in your watering can and add in the water, and it mixes right in, and you water with that. It looks great. The reason you need to use this is that basically, as you're watering your plants, because you're watering them a little more frequently and that water is draining out so well, all the nutrients are sometimes draining out as well. So even though you have that slow release fertilizer and it's releasing nutrients, it's also draining out a little bit faster. So that's why it's good every few weeks to use a water soluble based fertilizer to kind of pump up your plants. Another common recommendation for a liquid fertilizer is fish emulsion. I don't know, I guess you could buy that. It's kind of stinky. But the Miracle Grow is really handy. And it has instructions for how to use it and how to use it for containers, and it's just a good all-purpose. Okay, I'm going to go on into plants. Well, here, real quick, I'll just talk about when you're thinking about your containers, you could do some research on this online, but when you think about how much or how many of a particular plant to put in a pot, you want to think about it in terms of intensive planting or square foot gardening techniques. So you can look at intensive row planting or square foot gardening online, and you get a lot of pictures like this that tell you how much space a particular plant or vegetable needs. So in this picture, which is kind of a standard square foot gardening plan, you can see one cauliflower, one broccoli, one cabbage, one pepper fits in about a 1 square foot space. So 12 inches. So it needs 6 inches kind of all around it. So that's why we say one pepper for a 12-inch diameter pot.
Okay.
One cherry tomato for a 12-inch diameter pot. You could get 4 lettuce plants in a 12-inch diameter pot. And these would be 4 heads of lettuce. You could get that in a 12-inch diameter pot. You can get 9 green beans, 16 beets or carrots, 32 radish. So it just helps you give an idea of like how, so beets and carrots, you know, they need about 3 inches of space all around them, like kind of a diameter of 3 inches of space. So when you're spacing them out, this also helps you kind of figure out how to space them out in a pot as well. And then the other thing you want to think about is succession planting. You know, once you harvest from your pots, what can you plant again? So some great examples are you could plant 16, if you had a 12-inch pot, you could plant 16 carrots or so in the spring. And then in the fall, once you've harvested all those carrots, you could do 16 beets. There's no reason to not reuse it for spring and fall planting. Or if you want to do peas, I'll recommend some great peas for you to do. If you want to do peas in the spring, once you harvest those, they harvest really early, you could do a tomato plant. And then you could have a tomato plant in there through the summer that might last you into the fall. So that's what I mean by succession planting. Kind of taking the same space and planting and taking advantage of the seasons to plant more than one vegetable. So lots of techniques and thoughts online about that. But let's get into the veggies that I recommend. So I mentioned peas. My absolute favorite peas for containers are called Tom Thumb peas. They are awesome. Little container on the left, that's my pot in front of my yard. The best thing about these peas is you can plant them right now. The soil temperature needs to be about 40 degrees and we are there. So they're one of the first things you can plant in the springtime. I actually planted some of mine last week. I'm going to plant some more next week. So if you don't have Tom Thumb peas, try and get some and get them in your containers. And you will harvest them early May, which even if you don't use your container for another set of vegetables, you still have time to plant flowers in those containers, which is what I do a lot. So I'll plant peas early in the spring. I'll harvest my peas, and then I've still got plenty of time to plant flowers in my containers. So it's a great way to use up your pots kind of while you're waiting for flower season to begin.
What's that on the bottom?
What?
What is that on the bottom?
Oh, so I'll get to those. These are beets. Those 3 pictures on the right on the bottom, those are all beets. Beets, the ones that I would recommend for beets are Early Wonder, called Early Wonder. It's actually an heirloom from the 1900s. And that's the one on the right there. That's the Early Wonder beet. It can handle a little bit of shade, so a little less sun. There's also a variety called Pablo, Pablo, or any variety that says baby beet is going to work well for you. You'll harvest them about 2 to 3 inches in diameter. What you need to look for on beets and anything that you're going to plant in a container, I highly recommend anything that has a shorter days to harvest. So that's from when you plant the seed to when you harvest it. How long does that take? So Early Wonder and Pablo, they usually take about, 45 days to harvest. Whereas some of your bigger beets, like Detroit Red, they take 60 days. So that's just to give you an idea of, beets that work well in containers usually are shorter lived, shorter time to harvest, and smaller in size. On the bottom, that bottom picture is actually Swiss chard, the red, the white, and the yellow. Swiss chard is super great. I plant it every year. You can see how beautiful it is. You can buy a mixed variety called Bright Lights, or you can buy individual colors. It's super fantastic. It has greens that you can eat, the greens and the stalk, but it's beautiful in containers. You can just see the colors there, how really, it just really jazzes up your containers. And you can let those leaves grow really, really big or harvest them and keep it kind of a small plant. So, all right. Carrots are another great in containers. I will say carrot seeds can be a little hard to plant. They're really tiny compared to like beets or pea seeds. So that can be a challenge planting carrots. But some varieties to look for. The picture on the top is one called Parisian, or you might find it as Thumbelina or Paris Market. It's tiny. It's not much bigger than your thumb, maybe 2 inches round, 1 inch round. But they're really fun little carrots. They don't grow very deep, which is nice. Longer carrots are really difficult to grow in containers because they have to break through the soil and they have to get way down. You need a deep container. So these are all shorter or blunt carrots. Right in the center on the bottom with the fork, that's a variety called Littlefinger. Somewhere between 5 to max 7 inches long. So it's a little long, but you can see how skinny it is. That's a fun one to do. The one on the right, on the bottom right, that's Royal Chantenay or Red Core Chantenay. That's my favorite carrot, hands down, in terms of taste. Super sweet. It's about 5, max 7 inches. It's really delicious. I love that carrot. And the one on the left is a similar variety called Short and Sweet. Any questions about carrots or beets or peas? Radish and a particular variety of turnip are also great in containers. I'll start with radish, the 2 pictures on the left. If you're going to do radish in containers, there's only 3 varieties I would recommend. One is French breakfast, which is on the left-hand side. That left picture, it's the longer, skinnier ones. And then the little more ball ones, those are called Cherry Belle. And then there's a variety out there called Easter egg, which is what the center picture is. And you can see it's a mixed color. You can get some purple and pink and white in there. But the reason I recommend those is they have that shorter day to harvest. They're around 25 days from when you plant them to when you harvest them, versus watermelon radish or a daikon or a black radish. Those are harder to grow and they can take up to 60 days to harvest, and they're a lot bigger. So these are much smaller, easier to grow. The seeds are pretty big, not as big as beets, but they're easy to plant as well. And then my favorite, hands down, turnip, and the only one I recommend for containers is a variety called Hakuri, Hakuri. It's teeny tiny. It's about 2 inches in diameter. You'll want to plant those, I don't know, probably late March, early April. They don't have as strong of a turnip flavor, but they're teeny tiny, they're cute, and they have beautiful greens, and they look really great. And you can eat the greens, and they look really great in a container too. Their greens get really tall compared to like a radish green. Okay, and the Hakuri turnips, their day to harvest is only like 38 days. So super fast. You're talking a little over a month. Greens, any form of leafy green works excellent in containers. These are some of my favorites. Head lettuce, there's different types of greens, and when you buy seeds or transplants, you can buy head lettuce, so like romaine or iceberg, that's a head lettuce. Or you can buy leafy greens where you're just harvesting the leaves around the outside. Those are better. The leafy ones are better for containers. If you want to do a head lettuce for containers, I recommend Butter Crunch. That's the picture on the top far right. That's a Butter Crunch lettuce. Or you could do a Bib lettuce. So it's kind of a lighter, softer head, not like an iceberg. You can see it's more open. But that's the only type of head lettuce I do in a container. I really think you ought to focus on the leaves. And you can buy any sort of mesclun mix or mixed greens package. There's tons of them out there. The picture on the far right on the top, that's Merlot. That's a variety called Merlot lettuce. I just think it's a beautiful color, really, really pretty color, and it tastes great. It's a little bit crisp like a romaine, so I really like this variety, Merlot, but there's tons of lettuce varieties out there with all different shades and colors, really great options. Some other greens you can do besides lettuce, bok choy or pak choy. And that's one of the pictures on the bottom left. That's actually a variety called Purple Lady. It's tiny. It's about 2 inches tall. It's really fun. If you like bok choy, it's great to add into stir fries and mix in. So, and it grows super easy from seeds. Bok choy is really great to grow from seed. If you want an alternative from spinach, spinach is a great green to grow in containers. There's a variety out there called Orach, and it's the red in the center on the bottom, and that is spelled O-R-A-C-H. And it grows really tall. These are just some little seedlings that are starting, but it gets really tall, like several feet tall, if you let it grow. And you just are slowly harvesting, like you could harvest those lettuce leaves or leaves that you see there at that size. And there's beautiful magenta red, really pretty in your salads. They taste and they, are similar to spinach and they cook like spinach. They're a lot of fun. They're neat. It's something new that I discovered last year. And if you let it grow tall, it's really beautiful. It has really beautiful seed heads. I actually just let mine go last summer and let it go all into fall. And it was great. It was really great. And then another one that I can't do without a green that works well in containers is kale. And there's all kinds of kale, but my favorite kind is lacinato kale. That's the type. It's sometimes called dinosaur kale, Tuscan kale. A variety that I like of dinosaur kale is something called dazzling blue, which is here in this picture. And it's a deep dark green. Sometimes it'll have like a bluish tint to it, but it's more of a flat leaf kale than a curly kale. So if you're at the grocery store, you can usually find both a curly kale and this dinosaur or lacinato kale. You can kind of see the difference. All right. Couple more and we'll stop for questions. Onions are really great to plant in containers. When you buy onions, you buy them now. They're out and available now, and you'd want to plant them here in the next week or so. Next couple weeks, you've got till the end of March. But you can buy them as plants, which is the picture on the left at the top, or you can buy them as bulbs, which is the picture on the right, that little basket of onion bulbs. For containers, the best to buy are the onion bulbs, and to actually grow them as green onions. That's probably where you have the most success. And they're really easy to plant. You just grab one of those little bulbs and you just kind of stick it in the ground, and the tip of it can be sticking out just a bit. You put a little dirt around it. So they're real easy to plant, and they'll make great green onions, and they'll look really, really nice in your containers, tall and skinny little green onions coming out of your containers. Potatoes. Potatoes are, if you really want potatoes, I don't think they look pretty in a container. Just the vine isn't all that interesting in terms of other things that you can grow. But if you want to grow potatoes, I recommend, especially if you're doing it in a container environment, I recommend those, the bags. So you can see on the left-hand picture, that's a bag we've planted potatoes in. We've got kind of 4 potato plants in that bag. And there's a whole technique to planting potatoes. You can use buckets. A lot of people use gallon buckets. I don't think they're great for your traditional containers on your deck. But if you do want to plant potatoes, there's a lot of information online, and there's some smart techniques about planting them. You want to buy seed potatoes, which you can buy at your nurseries now, versus potatoes from the store. And then when you buy seed potatoes, you have to cut them into little pieces and let those pieces sit out for a couple of days before you plant them, so the skin hardens. And once that skin's hardened, then you can plant them in your containers. And then the picture on the right is kind of a little potato seedling popping up. So I've got one more kind of spring vegetable, and then we'll move into kind of herbs in summer, and I'll take some questions. So you can also do broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage in containers. I highly recommend, if you're going to do this, to buy the transplants. Starting these plants from seeds is really difficult. Just way more challenging than, say, tomatoes or beets or carrots. So I would just buy these at the garden centers. But you need, one of these plants is going to fit in a 12-inch diameter pot. And they don't need a huge depth. They don't need to be really deep. They need to be 8 inches to a foot deep. But you can get one plant in there. So, and there's lots of different varieties of these guys to choose from. But your nursery will have some good ones. I'll stop. Any questions there on any of those kind of more spring-oriented veggies for your pots?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about doing a lot of things from seeds.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't had much luck with that. I don't know what I'm doing. So do you have any tips?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I plant beets and carrots. I plant those from seeds right in the garden.
Okay.
One of the tricks for those is to keep the seeds wet, keep them moist.
Yeah.
You don't want to plant them too deep, but you want to water them so that they're moist. But you have to be careful how much water, because if you flood them, they'll move. But I will go out when I plant carrots and beet seeds. I'll be out there 2, maybe 3 times a day, putting a little water on them so they stay moist. That's the hard part.
I saw something where somebody was squirting them with the spray bottle.
You can do that. Anything you can do to keep them moist. Sometimes I use some stuff called vermiculite. I'll plant that over the top because that kind of holds the seed in place. And lettuce seeds are similar. You want to keep them moist. They're a little more forgiving. But carrots, definitely, they have to stay moist.
You didn't say anything about arugula. Is it a cool weather?
Yeah, you can do arugula. Definitely great cool weather. Awesome one to do.
Okay, you're motivating me to try it.
Yay,
again.
Good. Okay, I do have a couple more slides. I hope it's okay if we go a little over 3, or I can stop at any point. You guys tell me. But herbs are excellent in containers, and if you have some smaller containers, it's a great option to use those for your herbs because a lot of them you can bring inside. Cilantro, it's great in a container, but cilantro is one of those things that you have to cut and replant. It doesn't come back. So I have tons of cilantro seeds and I'm constantly planting cilantro because I cut it, pull it up, cut it off, and plant another batch of it. So parsley is a biennial, which means it typically will come back in, like, you'll plant it one year and then it'll overwinter and it'll come back the next year and then it will die. So sometimes you can get parsley to come back if you leave it outside in a pot. You don't have to bring that pot in. Last year I had a pot in my garage, a pot of parsley, and I cut the parsley off. I left the root in there. I brought the pot in my garage thinking that I would deal with it in the spring. And sure enough, in my garage, without ever being watered over the winter, the parsley came back. And my garage is dark, so the parsley came back. I did the same thing this year. We'll see. It shouldn't come back because it should die because it's a biennial, but we'll see. So parsley may come back for you. Basil is beautiful in a pot, especially because there's so many different colors of basil. You can buy purple basil. You can buy Asian basils that have sort of a purple shade or a purple green combo. There's a variety of basil called cardinal basil that is supposed to be really great as a cut flower to add to your cut flower arrangements. So it'll have a beautiful basil smell and the flower looks really pretty. So I'm trying that this year. Thyme is great, regular thyme, but you can also buy creeping thyme. And creeping thyme would be fun, I think, to plant underneath a taller vegetable. So underneath your cucumber, if you have a trellis for cucumber, or underneath tomatoes. I think that would look really neat in there. Just have that bed of thyme on the bottom and the tomato coming up the top. Rosemary will not overwinter. I bring my rosemary pots inside and take care of them over the winter inside, and then set them back out in the summer, and they come back every time. They do really well. Sometimes they will completely die back over the winter in my house, but I keep them watered, and then I take them back outside, and sure enough, they come back. So rosemary is a great keeper. Sage is pretty beautiful. You've got variegated leaves, golden leaves, purple leaves, irregular green leaves. Sage is great for color. And then oregano. Oregano is an easy container plant. If you're going to do things like dill or mint or something like lemon balm or lemon verbena, you want to keep those in their own pots. They expand like crazy and grow like crazy. And in fact, I don't always plant them in the ground. Actually, I have a spot in the ground completely separate from my garden where I plant mint, and I mow around it, so it really can't spread.
I made the mistake of planting mint in a flower bed. Now it's in our yard.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I have trouble with dill. Why do I have trouble with dill?
It doesn't like the heat. It's a spring plant. Again, I've had some years it works great for me, some years it doesn't. And I
use so much dill that
I love dill.
Grow.
I started using a variety called Mammoth dill, which is really tall, but it has worked well for me. And I try to keep it watered. I try to keep it really watered.
And it's called Mammoth dill?
Mammoth dill. It's really tall, but you can chop it before it gets too tall.
I'll have to try it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I guess some years just dill is great and some years it isn't, and I haven't figured out why. All right, we'll kind of move into summer veggies that are good in pots. An easy one is beans. I recommend bush beans over pole beans. Bush beans are nice and compact. They're smaller than a pepper plant. Pole beans are gonna require a trellis. I also will tell you that I think beans are better in the fall than in the spring. Sorry, I should say late summer. Beans are susceptible to frost. So I would not recommend planting any beans until May 10th. So you're sure there's no frost. Bush bean varieties that I like one is called Trofeo, Trofeo. Another one is Calima, Calima, or nickel. They're all kind of a French fillet style bean, so long and skinny. They do great. In fall, they're typically sweeter. That's why I recommend doing them in the fall. So, you could do a bunch of spring lettuces or spring beets and then swap that container kind of late July, August, plant some bush beans. And you'll have some really great beans for the fall. Cucumber is another great summer one, but it typically needs a trellis. But you can buy some bush varieties. I've never used a bush variety cucumber, so I don't know a ton about it, but the picture on the right is from a website called Savvy Gardening, and you can see the name is there on the right. They have a lot of great recommendations for plants. I go to that site a lot. That is a cucumber and a tomato that they have in a single pot.
I'll shut the door.
Which is really neat. They have a little trellis. It looks like the tomato is using the trellis more than the cucumber. But there are some bush varieties. Look for things that say bush in the name or patio in the name. So there's one called salad bush. There's one called patio pickle. Anything that has earth or bush in the name is going to be good for a cucumber in a pot. Eggplant is fantastic in pots, does really well. You're going to enjoy, I think, the smaller variety eggplants versus kind of the big classic ones that you find at the grocery store. So these two are a variety called Fairy Tale on the left and Patio Baby on the right. They do need a 12-inch diameter pot, but they'll do really well.
What was the first one called?
Fairy Tale.
Oh,
Fairy Tale, like a little story, fairy tale. Melons are also good in a pot. I'm going to give you a couple recommendations. The thing I will say is that sometimes I feel like the melon is so small that by the time I peel it and take out all the seeds, I've done a lot of work for not much melon. So I'll give you some recommendations and you can try some of them if you really want to. One that I haven't tried that I'd be interested in trying is actually from Johnny's Seeds. It's on the far left. It's called Mini Love, M-I-N-I Love, Mini Love. It supposedly has less seeds. It is a small watermelon. There's also Sugar Baby Bush. They're about 5 to 7 pounds. You could put that in a container and then let it just grow kind of all over your deck, and it would look great. So that second picture is the Sugar Baby Bush, and it's tiny, but I do grow that one. And then on the melon side, this next picture is Mango Melon from Baker Creek. That is tiny, but looks really cute. I love the color. I got a lot of good recommendations there. And then the last one is something called Minnesota Midget Cantaloupe. There's another tiny one, about 4 inches in diameter. But it's one you can try. If you really love cantaloupe, I'd give it a shot. So But you do have to have space, right? Because they are going to vine and kind of grow really big, and they'll definitely grow outside your pot. Peppers are super great in containers. They work really well. I grow some peppers in containers every year. I tend to stick with some of the smaller peppers, so not the giant bell peppers. I'll use some smaller peppers, like there's some varieties called lipstick or stuffing peppers, like mini stuffing peppers, or baby bells or mini bells. They all work well. The picture on the far right is from All American Selections. I don't know if you know that website, but they always recommend seeds every year. That's a great website to go to if you're kind of looking for a certain style of variety. They've tried them, and these are the ones they recommend. But that one right there in the pot is called pot apino. So it's a jalapeno in a pot. And then the one in the middle is something called shishito, shishito. These are my new favorite pepper. They're a frying pepper. These are, they can be, you can buy them as a Japanese variety or Italian variety. You can eat them raw, or you can just fry the whole thing, kind of saute them in some olive oil and just eat them just like that, right? With a little salt maybe. But they're great in a pot. They're compact and tiny plants. And then squash. There's summer squash and winter squash. That picture on the left is a winter squash that is recommended for containers. It's something called Golden Nugget, and it was created as a replacement to sweet potatoes for certain areas. It does have a long day to harvest. We're talking about 85 days, but it's only about a 3 to 4 foot tall bush style plant. So when you're looking for any squash plants, you want to look, especially the winter squash. You can find some acorn squash that are in bush plants versus vining. And so just some options there to try if you've got some bigger pots and you want to try something unique. Squash is really susceptible to squash bugs and squash vine borer. And they're really bad here. You probably have some good success with them the first year or two that you grow them, but then the squash bugs will find them and they'll be a pain. If you ever want to know about that, I could talk ad nauseum about my dislike of squash bugs. For zucchini or summer squash, you can pretty much do any zucchini you want on anyone, but look for things that say hybrid in the name or bush in the name. Those are going to be a little bit smaller, more compact, better for a container. But you're still talking, you need at least a 12-inch diameter container for those guys. I think the zucchini in this picture is something called Gold Rush is the variety, and it has about 45 days to harvest. So, but you can get a lot of zucchini out of one plant, so that's a bonus. Tomatoes. This is my last slide, and then we can talk about veggies all you want. Tomatoes are good in containers. Tomatoes are classified 3 different ways: as determinate, semi-determinate, or indeterminate. You're going to want to look for tomatoes that are determinate or possibly semi-determinate. Determinate tomatoes typically grow as a bush, and it kind of goes one big plant, and all of the fruit kind of matures at one time or in one period. Whereas an indeterminate tomato is vining and just grows really big and really long and keeps growing all summer long and keeps producing tomatoes all summer long. They're just really big. They'll grow outside of your cages really fast, and they can just be kind of hard to do in a container, and the roots get really long. All tomato roots get really long, so we need tall containers for tomatoes. But if you go the determinate route, get some determinate routes, you can get some really fun ones that work great in containers. The number one or two that I would probably recommend is the one on the left is also All American Selection. It's a winner. You can buy these. AAS is just a designation. You can buy them at various places. But this particular one on the left that's yellow, it's called Patio Choice. And they have a Patio Choice Yellow, a Patio Choice Red. They probably have other Patio Choice. But you can see that it kind of grew in a bush. It's just kind of one compact plant, and everything kind of turned at one time. So what you could do is buy a couple of these plants and get one in your container, maybe 2 weeks later buy another one, and 2 weeks later buy another one to kind of extend your harvest. you wanted to do something like that. And they don't all produce all at once like that. I mean, it's over several weeks. The other AAS one at the bottom that's in that hanging basket, that's Lizano, Lizzano, another good one for a container. If you want to do something a little bigger than a cherry tomato, you could do Roma tomatoes. That's the picture on the top right. Most Roma tomatoes, most varieties are actually determinate, meant for patio. So there's one called Little Napoli, Plum Crimson. So and almost any, just look on the package, it'll say if it's determinate or indeterminate on the package of seeds, or when you're buying the plant at the nursery, they'll be able to tell you which ones are determinate or indeterminate. And then if you want a little bit bigger, if you want kind of more of your round tomato, it won't get huge, but there's a variety called Celebrity or Marglobe that are good. Another patio tomato that I like is one called Gold Nugget. It's in the picture of the bowl of tomatoes on the right-hand side. That is my favorite determinate patio tomato. I grow it every year, and it's called Gold Nugget. Easy to find at any of the nurseries. So that's it. Questions on some of the summary or anything, actually? Any questions you guys have?
Jennifer?
Yes.
I have a question. Last year I received as a gift that self-contained, it's a container that has the water reservoir on the bottom, and then the soil on top.
Yeah.
The kids thought I could do some gardening, you know, making it easier. And
yeah,
I didn't have very good luck with my tomatoes in that.
Okay.
And so what do you think? Should I try something else in it this summer, or?
Do you know how deep it is? You said there's a reservoir of water, and then how deep is it?
Well, the soil part isn't that deep, about 8 to 10 inches, and then the reservoir part is about 6 inches.
The first thing I would say is definitely choose, maybe try one of these determinate varieties, the patio varieties, something that's smaller and more compact, because tomatoes have a really deep taproot. It can go a foot to 2 foot deep, and you know, if your pot's only 8 inches deep, that root's just gonna, and then it's got nowhere to go, and it's just not going to be as healthy of a plant.
Yeah, it wasn't a very healthy plant, and there was a lot of greenery, and not too many tomatoes.
Yeah, so that would tell me that it's also heat. I don't know where it was. Heat, the hot from summer is a real problem for tomatoes, and if it's not, tomatoes are really picky. You know, if it gets over 75 degrees at night and over 95 degrees during the day, tomatoes won't take fruit. So, you know, and they're really, tomatoes are hard, they're finicky. They're also easy, I guess. But, you know, they want a really nice environment. And when you're growing them in a container, you're kind of limiting that environment. So it has to be really, really nice. So, you know, I don't know what type of soil you used or if it had much fertilizer in it. Tomatoes like a lot of nitrogen. So that might have had something to do with it. I don't know how the water reservoir worked.
That's what I don't know either. I mean, I kept filling the reservoir up, but I kept feeling like the tomatoes maybe were needing more water than they were getting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought I ought to switch and do something else.
Yeah. I guess I would want to know how well that kind of drained out, because how the water kind of got out of there, because tomatoes also don't like their roots to be wet. So maybe the bottom was really wet from the reservoir, putting water in there, you know, versus you watering on the top. So the top would dry out because of wind and sun, but maybe the bottom was still really wet.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, it got great reviews and write-ups online, but it didn't turn out to be the best.
You know, I might try lettuces. I think you'll have a lot of luck with any of the greens. You'll have a lot of luck. They're much more forgiving. Beets. I have you know, knock on wood, I've had great success with beets if you like beets.
Yep.
Great success with them in pots, and radishes. I mean, maybe focus on more of a lettuce, get your hands, you know, get more comfortable with using those pots with some of the easier ones, and then try pepper. Peppers don't go down as deep, so maybe a pepper would work well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I ended up having to put the metal wires on top of my tomatoes because they just got crazy last year in my pots. Yeah. I had a huge plastic pot and I just stuck one plant in each pot. Mm-hmm. They went crazy, and I don't know if I should cut them back or how I can keep them more contained.
Yeah, I'm guessing they were the indeterminate style of tomato, and that's just how they grow. That's what they do.
So the determinate would be a better one to get then.
Yep, and when you go to the nursery, you can specifically ask for tomato plants that are determinate.
Okay.
They should be able to help you find those.
Okay.
And tomatoes are actually pretty easy to start from seed. So, you know, if you want to buy some seeds, I use a red solo cup. I just use a red solo cup, and I use my scissors to clip, you know, just straight. I don't make a hole. I just clip it. So there's a slit, like 3 slits. Fill it with potting mix. Put my seeds in there. Put it in a tray and water them, and you know they'll grow in front of a really sunny window.
Okay.
Right. So if you want to try 1 or 2 from seeds, you certainly, you know, a couple from seed you can. They do really well from seed, and then you'll just transplant it to your pot.
Okay, I might try that.
Do you order your seeds online, or do you?
I do. I buy them from the nurseries too, but I'm not supposed to say. But my favorites are Baker Creek. Johnny's Seed has an excellent selection. Good. I think Johnny's Seed also has a lot of great information about their seeds, how to grow them, you know, are they good for a container or not? It's very informative. Even if I don't buy my seeds from Johnny's, I sometimes go there for information. Territorial Seed is another good one that I really like. And there are a lot of other great ones out there. So don't let that link. Burpee seeds are great. But those are some of my favorites. Johnny's also has really great flower seeds, if you like flowers. Well, I would love to hear how your spring and container gardens go. I'd love to see some photos if you know, this summer as things go along, if you have some photos, I'd love to see them. I'd love to hear about it.
Maybe we can collect some and send them your way.
We could do a check-in to see how everything's going.
There you go. Are there any questions for Jennifer? All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, again for your great information.
Yeah, and the next slide here is just some helpful hints, or not hints, but helpful resources. I definitely wanted you to see those. Savvygardening.com. There's also the Master Gardener Horticulture Extension Hotline. They'll answer your questions. They're really great. You can reach me. You can email me. I'm on Instagram. If you are on Instagram as Casey Gardening Girl, that's my tag on Instagram. But feel free to email me if you have questions. And thank you guys. It was a pleasure to talk with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
See you next
Jennifer.
time.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. I think we'll need it.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.